Hello, I'm delighted to say that today we have Sorin Petre, a partner with PricewaterhouseCoopers in Romania, who also happens to be president of Anavar, the valuation organization in Romania, here today to discuss some of the effects of the war in Ukraine upon valuations in the region and, frankly, worldwide. But before we do that, Sorin, would you mind giving a brief overview of the valuation practice in Romania before the war, as well as an introduction of Anavar to our listeners?
Yes, of course. Thank you for the invitation and good afternoon to everybody. A short description of the valuation practice here in Romania. Anavar is a strong association of professionals. We have valuation standards covering most of the type of valuations, business, assets, real estate, and so on. And we are organized and regulated by laws since 2011. So from this perspective, we have quite a stable association with a long history. Basically, the association before being regulated was set up back in 1992. So it's quite a long history for Romania. Now we're going on comments before and after starting the war. It is difficult to point out what were the key changes in the practice, but for sure, from the business valuation perspective, we see more challenging times. Something similar was back in 2020 when the pandemic started and the uncertainty was there. Now we add up the impact of the war, so the uncertainties increase significantly, especially in business valuation. So we try to adapt to this new situation. As association, we are trying to come with some comments, some some guidelines regarding some recommendation on how to manage these challenging times.
Yeah, I can imagine that must be difficult as a neighboring country to Ukraine. I'm sure it's affected valuations, not just in Romania, but probably throughout the entire region where your practice will do engagements. Is that correct?
It's clearly in line with what you said. We see the impact in the neighborhood countries. Of course, the biggest effect, the biggest impact is in Ukraine, but we also see here some changes, and these are related to the changes in businesses. There are a lot of businesses with activities in Ukraine. There are a lot of businesses having raw materials or services acquired from Ukraine. So this all impact the valuation services that we are providing here. And on top of this, we see the energy prices, for example, going up. And but this is not only in the neighborhood countries; it's all over Europe. It's a trend which has a quite significant impact in most of the businesses.
Yeah, I can imagine it is a strong impact. Have you seen changes in the purposes of valuations you're performing since the war started, or has it resulted in more volume of work or less?
I can say that most of the valuation, at least here in Romania, being related to some regulatory requirements, for example, financial reporting, bank guarantees, even tax on properties. So being legal requirements, this type of valuation need for this type of valuation is still here, is still there. So we have a lot of work to do on these fields. Relating to valuation as support for transactions, here we didn't notice a significant impact after the war, but maybe it's too soon. For example, it was an impact when the pandemic started, because some of the transactions were postponed due to uncertainties. Now it is an uncertainty, but transactions with companies which are not impacted by the war in Ukraine are still on the market. And on top of this, there are these opportunities related to the energy field. So here also the state aid, EU fund support to develop several investment in this field is helping in the sense that investors are interested in investing in this area, and we see transactions on the market, and implicitly the need for valuation services is here. So overall, I can say we can see a shift from the requirements for valuation services, but still valuation it's a service that is needed on the Romanian market for sure, but I suppose that also in other countries.
Well, those are really fascinating comments, because you're coming off a few years of having to work through the pandemic, obviously, and now with the war obviously affecting it, it's unknown how long that's going to last. How has that affected Romania's economy?
Of course, Romanian economy was affected. The cost of the invested capital, the cost of borrowing also for the state increased, but this is not only in Romania. The inflation rate is increasing. We notice inflation rate in excess of 10% these days. On medium and long term, of course, we expect to come back to the let's say normal levels, but these are factors that impact the economy of the country. What I mentioned before, energy prices are also a significant factor affecting the economy, and the supply chains were significantly disturbed during the pandemic, and now we have the war. So it's a changing or expected change in the way the businesses are operating after these two significant events.
Yeah, I can imagine. Have these events resulted in an increase in impairment analysis that you've had to perform?
This is clear. We are doing a lot of impairment tests of assets, and here is the pressure also from the auditors, which has to be prudent in their assessment of in the audit of the financial statements. So the question, the asset is impaired or not, it's a question that is actual, and it's key word in the financial statements, and it's normal. If you think about, for example, a real estate office, during the pandemic, everybody started to work flexible, and it's a question mark how long the office will be rented, and how about the rents. On the other hand, the social distance requires more space, so it's not straightforward to assess the impact. That's why the thorough analysis of the potential impairment of the assets is required.
I can imagine, and those forces obviously affect issues worldwide, not just within the region. Clearly, have you seen much of a change in discount rates that you've been applying in Romania or Ukraine or the region as a result of these?
I would say that discount rates increased, but this is also related to the inflation, to the increase in the yields, government bond yields, which it's the key input in the required return from investors. But also the business risks are assessed more in details by the investors. Probably, if we are thinking at the normal cost of capital by applying weighted average cost of capital, I would say that the cost of capital increased first of all because of the risk-free rate and country risk, but also the equity market risk premium. So the perception of the investors investing in a business we see that it's a little bit higher. So if before for energy sector we saw a weighted average cost of capital of 7-8% in euro terms, now I think that it's 9-10 and even above 10%. So it is an additional risk. It is perceived by the market. We are still able to apply the weighted average cost of capital because we see on the market relevant information about the yields, about the return on specific investments on the stock exchange.
Yeah, I would agree. That is one of the benefits, I think, of coming out of the increased use of technology where information can be more readily available regarding these rates of return and how we can develop them for our analysis. You mentioned several things of importance, especially in the supply chain. When I think of Ukraine, I think of agriculture, of course, and grain, but I'm sure the effects of the supply chain issues really touch many industries throughout the region.
This is clear, and what we are, or at least what myself and my team are trying to implement in our valuation is to quantify these potential impacts, short-term, medium or long-term, in estimating the cash flows. So discount rate, we saw that it's higher because of the additional risk, but I think the most important is to assess the impact in the expected cash flows of a business. And here we are talking about companies which have direct impact. I don't know, with the activities in Ukraine or in countries where the war has a clear impact, but it is also about indirect impact. The best example, I think, is the price of electricity, of energy across the region, which is most likely or probably the direct, indirect impact of what's happened near us.
Yeah, and thank you for the comments about trying to quantify cash flows and analyze as much as possible. That's always a key component of developing a valuation, and I think most of our profession, unfortunately, goes straight to discount rates at the expense of really analyzing the cash flows. It's just a wonderful comment.
Yeah, it is. I clearly recommend first to try to quantify any impact in cash flows, because adjusting discount rate without having clear indications from the market, it's too arbitrary, it's difficult to be justified. Cash flows are the keys, as you also mentioned.
Absolutely. Well, back to Anabar for a few minutes. It's a large organization, very active with many events and conferences. Do you have anything coming up in the near future that you'd like to mention as significant events or conferences?
Yes, as you mentioned, we organize yearly conferences, but also seminars in different areas. Specifically, this year we celebrate 30 years of Anevar in Romania. So our conferences are under this event, 30 years of Anevar in Romania, and on 9th of September, where is the Valuator Day here in Romania, we will spot on this these 30 years on an event organized here in Bucharest. We used to have this event internationally. Even in pandemic, we invited some guests from abroad. We'll see this year how it will be possible to have this and to have also guests from abroad.
I think that would be wonderful. People are traveling again, so yes. I think it would be great. And as we're speaking, we're showing the link to the websites that you mentioned and the events. And congratulations on the 30 years. That's just a wonderful accomplishment.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much for the discussion and for telling us a bit about the effects of the war and what's happening within Romania and the region. We do appreciate it. To our viewers, if you have any questions, please leave comments in the box below and we will get back to you. And again, thank you so much for joining us on the discussion today.